Hi, I'm standing here in Hall 57, which is our commercial showroom. And there's a reason why we're here. In here we have a lot of commercial presses, guillotines, skull folders, and cutting systems from Polar. And the reason why we're standing here in front of an Easymatrix106 CS is we believe it's the perfect partner for the commercial printer, but it also goes into the packaging segment as well. Easymatrix106, sheet size 1060x760, and the minimum size of 300 by 350. What we'd like to show you today is a job changeover, and we'll start off with a simple 6-up crash lock carton, and then we will change to a 2-up tray. And we'll do that step by step, and we will show you the processes that you have to go through, and hopefully we will convince you that this is then a fast make ready, a quick turnaround machine, ideally suited for the short run work. So as you can see, the machine behind me is running at the moment. We're running around about 6,500 sheets an hour. The maximum machine performance is 7,700 sheets an hour. As you see, the machine is very stable in production. We've got a good transfer from the feeder onto the table, and then an accurate sheet transfer throughout the machine. So I think at this point, we've seen the machine running on the particular job. Maybe it's time now we should think about changing it over. So Tobias, can you change over the machine for us? Whilst Tobias is changing over the machine, we'll just walk through it and we'll talk you through the stages step by step. As you see, we have a driven pallet lift on there, and what you'll notice is that the pallet actually sits on a complete platform, and that platform we have the ability to move 20 millimeters, and that gives us the assurance that we have got the pallet in the correct position in the machine. What you'll also notice going through here when we take the pallet out is we have a centerline system which starts at the feeder and goes all the way through to the delivery. Now you can clearly see the center line and also the side guides. There is also a pre-pile alignment system that we can also offer with this machine if you're running a lot of B2, B1 sheets or variable sizes that you want to pre-align before you put them in to the machine. Now, one of the reasons we chose these two jobs is the different sheet size, and this will be one of the benefits of this particular machine in the adjustment of the feeder head itself. So we've got our pallet now in position. The suction head, obviously for the larger sheet, is much further back, but it's a very simple adjustment of that suction head. Simply lift the lever and the whole head moves. That's a lot of time saving in terms of adjustment of the sheet size. But what's important, we also have the fine adjustment, which Tobias is just doing now. And as you expect on a machine like this, you have the ability to adjust your forward suckers and your lifting suckers, both in terms of height and also the angle that we can pick up. The machine is ideally suited for anything from around about 90 grams worth of paper up to 2,000 grams and 4 millimeters of corrugated. So a complete wide spectrum of substrates. What Tobias is now doing is he's just adjusting the side guides. Whilst we're standing at the feeder, we also have a manual non-stop operation where we can slide the bars into the pallet, and we can also keep running if we have that longer run work. So we've set our feeder. What we'll do now is we'll now take the tools out to the die cutting station, and we'll show you a few facilities within the die cutting station itself. Okay, so we now come to the heart of the die cutter, the cutting station. So now Tobias will unlock the tools. So what we have here, we have a couple of options here. We have the ability to work with, you'll see it when he takes it off, a 1mm plate. Why do we use a 1mm plate? We use that for a fast make ready system. So the idea of this is that when you've run the job the first time, you put this back into the machine and you put it back in virtually the same position as last time, with the ability to micro adjust that. So your make ready time is greatly reduced. Historically, you might have bedded that onto a 5mm plate or a 4mm plate in this case, which you can still do. And what you would then do is you might use something like a Ceto creasing line, or you might use some Pertinax matrices, which you would then mount directly onto a 5mm flat table. With the 1mm plate, as you see here, this was the job. We've already made ready this job in the past. He puts the plate on. These are already made and set onto the machine. He locks the plate back onto the 4mm plate. And what you can see here on the side here is we have the ability to move that 1mm plate. Tobias, how much are we moving this? About 0.9 of a millimeter?
Yes.
About 0.9 of a millimeter we can move that plate in both directions. And that's important because obviously what you need to make sure is your knife goes directly back into your creasing. So the 1mm plate's been adjusted. He'll slide that back in. He'll lock it back up again. He'll unlock the upper tool, which is where the actual die itself is mounted. Now here we have again, it's almost like a balancing plate to make sure that we have as much even pressure going across the full width of the bed as we possibly can, and it also protects the patch-up sheet. What do we mean by a patch-up sheet? Tobias, just while you're standing there, we'll just take this here. So a patch-up sheet makes sure that we have even pressure from front to back and from left to right. And we use the tape here to make up any differences that we have when we're trying to make sure we have the same quality of creasing and cutting across the full size of the sheet. And that's a common practice. That's not something unique to this machine. That's a common practice that you'll have to do with every job. And there are many reasons. It's not necessarily the bed of the machine that affects that. It could also be the quality of the tooling, wear and tear of the tool in certain areas. So it's a vital part of a make ready for a die cutter. What Tobias is now doing is the die itself, we have to make sure that during heat build-up, it doesn't bow in the middle of the die, so we have to positively lock it in with locking screws through into the bottom of the die. So we'll now turn that over, the chase over. And we have quick lock in the chase. Again, this is a perfect way of making sure that the die goes back in the same position as it was last time. And there are two things that here. We have the 2 points of locking it in, and we also have a center line system. And hopefully you can just see that with this little block here in the middle. In the die board itself, there is also a small hole cut out, so we know that when we put the die in, it definitely goes back in the same position here. And with the clamping tools at the back here, we're putting the same amount of pressure on that die every time to lock it in position. Just before Tobias puts in the correct tool, I just wanted to show you something. We were talking about the notch in the wood. There's the notch in the wood. There's the die board going into it. Now obviously that die is much smaller than the chase itself, and these will not meet the back of the die board. So what we have is we have the ability to slide in an adapter bar. So an adapter bar, as you can see, has teeth on the end. We have teeth in the back of here, and we can lock it in. If we have very small differences in die boards, for example, if you're running perhaps a 104 size machine, we have adapter bars that actually just fit here and lock in with the initial and the original quick lock devices. Now, as we use here in a perfect scenario, you would use a full size board. The additional cost of the wood is almost nominal, but it also means that you always have that equal pressure throughout the bed of the machine. And then what we need to do is place balancing knives in the die. So again, we have a uniform spread of pressure across the full width of the sheet. So again, Tobias will now lock that die back into place with a couple of locating screws. There are a few tricks in this area you can do to help you again reduce your make ready times. You can make your own recordings on the patch up sheet, for example. The amount of cutting pressure you used the last time you ran the job. You can also write some additional information on there as you put the patch up sheet in here now. Again, you're working off a centerline system. Your patch up sheet has a centerline. The chase is also etched with a centerline. And literally a little bit of sticky tape just holds the sheet down flat and stops it bellying up in the middle. Then we put our Pertinax plate back on the top. We slide the tool back in. You heard then that was pneumatic clamping going on, and now he will just lock the tool in position. So now we've pretty much got our die set. We might have to come back to this area later on just to perform a fine adjustment of the cutting plate to the die, just to make sure our creases are exactly in the right position. We will now move along the machine and we will change the stripping tools. Okay, so continuing our make ready, we now need to address the stripping station. So Tobias now will raise the upper tool. Now on this machine we have quick lock, so with a simple, quick, easy release of the upper tool, we can then slide the upper tool out. Now what we are using here in this particular jobs are dedicated tools, supplied by the die maker as a set. So you'd have your die, your patch up sheet, your upper and lower middle stripping tools. And these obviously have advantages because they're more accurate and precise, and they match exactly to the die profile that we've produced in the die cutting stage. So the upper tool is out. We will now take out the middle board. The middle board there is really used to support the sheet and to enable us to press the waste we want to take out through that middle board. Again, this is a quick lock device, so the operator can simply and easily remove those tools, ready for the next job. We'll show you the alternative option in a moment when we've finished this particular section. We'll go over to the more conventional, or perhaps the old-fashioned way of doing it, which is with universal tooling. So he now slides the bottom board in. Adjust the backstop. And again, quickly locks it up and it's in position. Now that's a dedicated tool for each and every job. And now slide in the upper tool. As I mentioned before, in the feeder and also in the cutting station, we still work off of a center line system. So we know, again, that all those tools are perfectly in line throughout the machine. So he slides the upper tool in, a little bit of fine adjustment, and locks it in place. And now lower the upper tool back down into position again. Shut the window. Now that section is pretty much set. In some jobs you might need bottom pins, but we'll cover the bottom pins again in a minute. But you still have the ability to slide a frame in the bottom of the machine mounted with bottom pins if you need that little bit of extra help in getting out perhaps very small pieces of waste or very intricate pieces of waste. So that's the stripping station. Two systems I mentioned before. One is dedicated quick lock devices, and the other is made manually with frames on perhaps on a pre-make ready table. You don't have to have a pre-make ready table. The machine comes standard with the frames and the tools, and the table is an option. But the table obviously is a more convenient area to mount both your upper pins and also your lower pins if you need them. And the lower pins obviously are spring loaded. You mount them in a frame on crossbars. You lay your sheet on the top and you can put the two tools together so you know that your upper and lower pins are in position. And you take those two frames, the upper and the lower, you take it out of the make ready table and then you slide them both in the machine. Make ready times obviously for this system is much longer depending on the complexity of the work that you've got to strip. And when you consider now when the cost of tooling is coming down, perhaps a saving is always, rather than the make ready time, you save it in terms of your up and running much quicker. So it's a combination. Tobias now has to change obviously the pallet. We've reduced again the size of the sheet, so we need to change the joggers, and we'll show you the other facilities within the delivery, i.e. as Tobias is just putting in here the non-stop rack. As you'd expect, it's a full body safety guard there, so I can't step in there without stopping the machine. Put the pallet back in. Because we broke that safety curtain, the blue light was flashing and we can't start the machine again until we repress that blue button. So also make sure that no one is in that part of the machine while someone else starts the machine. So pallet's now back in position, and we will now just show you one other item on the machine, which would be the tab inserter. Again, this might be very useful, particularly perhaps for commercial printers that want to make sure that they only send out a certain amount of work, so we can program within the computer how many sheets we want to run before we insert a tab, and we just keep repeating that until we run out that job. So it's a nice way of making sure that you deliver, whether it's 1,000 sheets or 10,000 sheets, you've got that option there to make sure that you've got an accurate count in there in stages of 50 or 100, whichever you require. So now the delivery is pretty much set in there. We might have to adjust some joggers when we get the first sheets through the machine. So we go back to the feeder and the feed table. And Tobias will bring the first sheet onto the table. And I'll just cross over. So what he's now doing, he has to adjust his side lays. This machine has both a left-hand side lay and a right-hand side lay, and both of those have the ability to push or pull. But what you don't need is you don't need tools to make that adjustment. So it's very simple, very quick to change to whichever system that particular job requires. And that's important, especially if you're running lightweight stocks and also corrugated and litho laminate work. The machine itself is equipped with 4 front lathes, and they are selected on the screen, so we can choose which lathes we want to use. Normally you would use certainly the outer 2 for the larger sheet size and perhaps the inner 2 for the smaller sheet sizes. But we can actually select that on the screen, so we're not restricted to that. It's not actually on this machine, but what we do have an option in this area is we have an option of adding a vacuum table, so we have a couple of vacuum belts in there. So if we want to suck the material down onto that table, we can, and that can be important for lightweight and also heavier weight stocks if we've got some curl in the board. The actual furniture on the table is a quick adjustment. As you can see here, it's a centralized adjustment. We can still adjust things individually, but 95% of the time you don't need to do that. On this machine you see a lot of these black pipes here. That's an anti-static device, so if you're running some sensitive surfaces, we have that option available as well. So now we've got our sheet, it's gone into the die cutting station, in through the stripping station, and we'll take a test sheet out at the back in the delivery. That's also a nice thing about putting the rack in, it's very simple to get it out. And he will now check the quality of what is actually run on the job. Now, to protect the die itself, he would have backed some of the pressure away, so he won't have cut all the way through the material. Otherwise we run the risk of damaging the make ready itself. But it looks pretty good for a first hit. So I think you're just going to make a couple of adjustments. While he's doing that, we've got a couple of tools to show you. Now, we said at the beginning, this is an ideal machine for the commercial printer. So commercial printers perhaps doing kiss cutting, they might be doing a lot of creasing work without doing a lot of cutting in there. So we can actually have some specialized dies. There's a good example of this one. It's a universal die with creasing tool, so there's your creasing knife in here, but as you can see I can mount that anywhere in that die itself, so I'm not restricted to having to buy a new die every time. I buy some creasing rule or a cutting rule and I can place that anywhere in this tool. Embossing. Because of the amount of pressure we can apply up to 260 tons of cutting pressure. The machine is also ideally suited for embossing, for high quality embossing. And what we have here is a universal embossing plate. So here I can screw into there my embossing blocks. Again, it's a universal tool, so I can put them pretty much anywhere I want to in that die, so I don't have to buy a specific die for every single job. And these are the sort of tools that we're developing with our partners to make sure it gives you the solutions that you need to make it a little bit more cost effective when you're doing multiple jobs in different substrates and for different applications. So certainly embossing, de-embossing, kiss cutting, creasing, so production wallets, cartons, paper jobs on here are all standard types of work that we can produce on an Easymatrix 106. So whilst I've been showing you the tools, Tobias has just come back up onto the machine and he will now make a couple of fine adjustments. So he will lower the upper tool to the middle tool, he'll lock it in position, and he will check obviously that they're perfectly married top and bottom. He'll now put a sheet onto the feed table. Take it into the cutting station, we'll cut it with a little bit more pressure on than the last time we did. We'll strip the waste. And we'll deliver it onto the non-stop rack. What it's got to do now is obviously got to adjust, because we've changed the size of the sheet in both directions, he's got to adjust the side joggers. So he just released here, pushed it in, and now he will lock it back up again. Does the same on the drive side. So quick, simple adjustments depending on the sheet size that you're running. And in comes the back. Okay, so that sheet we've gone through, we'll just run another one through. So now we're up and running at 6,000 sheets an hour. Just run a good handful of product. And he'll now take one of the test sheets out and make sure the quality is happy with it. So the racks come out. So Tobias now has just taken a sheet to test now the quality, which looks pretty spot on to me. And it's also a good example of what we're actually taking out in terms of the stripping, as you can clearly see the areas that we've taken out. We can actually go a little bit further in certain jobs. Obviously we need enough material to draw it all the way through the machine, but you can take off the sides and also the back edge if required. So yeah, that's good to go. So we'll now ramp the machine up. So we've made our make readies, we've changed our tools, we've checked our quality, and we're now increasing the machine speed steadily. We're now up to just under 7,000 sheets an hour. And again, the importance here is stability. It's all very well trying to run the machine at full speed, but if it keeps stopping and starting, it really makes no sense. And it's the sheets on the floor that count at the end of the day. So the Easymatrix106 CS, also available just as a cutting machine as well without the stripping section, is an ideal machine and an ideal accompaniment for your commercial print factory and also your packaging factories if you're looking to enhance what you already have. As we said at the beginning, 7,700 sheets a minute. high-speed production machine with quick make-ready times and good repeatability in your make-readies. So hopefully one day we'll get you in front of this machine here in Hall 57, the commercial showroom for Heidelberg, or perhaps in one of our packaging showrooms up in Hall 11. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we've given you a little insight into the abilities and the possibilities with the Easymatrix 106. Thank you, Tobias. Thank you very much.